Welcome to Crosstalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. Targeting Iran in the fog of impending war. While the U.S. and Israel publicly disagree on how to define red lines when it comes to Iran's nuclear program, what is the possibility of an October surprise? Will Israel attack Iran before the American election and thus force Washington's intervention as well? To crosstalk the possibility of a strike against Iran, I'm joined by Miko Pellet in San Diego. He is a peace activist and author of The General Son, Journey of an Israeli in Palestine. In Tel Aviv, we have Gideon Levy. He is a columnist and member of the Haaretz editorial board. All right, gentlemen, crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want. Gideon, there's a concept called the October surprise, meaning right before, or the month before a presidential election, something happens to change it, okay? And our viewers may know some of those events. What do you think the possibility is that Israel unilaterally could attack Iran? Netanyahu has gone to the United Nations and made his case. I mean, he thinks he's right.
It's hard to imagine that Israel will attack in the coming weeks. It's really almost impossible to imagine it. Even though, you know, by itself, when you speak about a surprise, you speak about something which might be unexpected, which must be unexpected. But if we are really talking rationally, there's no chance that Israel will dare to do something right now, as long as Israel is perceived as a rational country.
You know, Miko, I think that Gideon really hit the nail on the head here, because in Western media, and we hear from a lot of Israeli officials from the right wing, is that the mullahs are irrational. All the leadership in Iran is irrational. That's why they can't have the bomb, et cetera, et cetera. But I think Gideon's right. I mean, we get a lot of irrationality coming out of people like Netanyahu.
Yes, that's true. At the same time, I would say that Israel needs the Iran issue and the Iran threat as a distraction. It's used it for several years now as a smokescreen so that it can continue the brutal oppression, the killing, the incarceration, the torture of Palestinians, so that it can continue holding thousands of Palestinian political prisoners, so that it can destroy towns and villages, so that it can keep people in Gaza in this awful concentration camp. And all the time, all the while, people talk about Iran. I think it's a bluff. I think the whole Iran thing is a bluff and a myth. But Bibi Netanyahu and generally the state of Israel knows how to use this very skillfully to its advantage. So on the one hand, nobody can talk about the Palestinian issue because there's this great threat from Iran. On the other hand, if Israel doesn't get what it wants, then you better watch out, because we're going to attack if we don't get what we want. And so attacking would actually mean they'd have to give up this wonderful political card. And I don't think they would want to do this. This is a very successful strategy that's allowed Israel to accomplish quite a lot.
Okay, Gideon, if I go back to you, how does Netanyahu back down? Okay, Obama has said no. The American intelligence community has said no. Okay, how does Netanyahu get it, back down and say okay? Because he's really risking a lot here.
Yes, he's risking a lot also in deterioration in the relationship between Israel and the United States. Mainly if Barack Obama will be re-elected, then Netanyahu might face a real problem, even though we don't know yet if Obama in a second term will be any different than Obama in the first term. But in any case, there are many ways to get down off the tree or to continue the rhetoric without doing anything. Don't forget also that domestically, Netanyahu most probably lost an ally for an attack, namely the Minister of Defense, Ehud Barak, who in the recent days or weeks sound all of a sudden different. And then Netanyahu is really quite isolated even domestically. So all this together will have to bring some kind of getting down of the tree and pulling time and still keeping it, because I totally agree with Miko saying that this served Israel, this 2 years of threatening and spreading fears, to continue it on a lower fire until something will happen.
Miko, do you think Netanyahu is just terrified of the Obama, a second administration, because of the bad personal relationship they have had? And let's face it, Netanyahu has snubbed Obama a number of times and his administration. I'm pretty sure the administration would like to see the end of Mr. Netanyahu.
Yes, but I don't think Netanyahu, I don't think it matters to him. I think Netanyahu knows very well that here in America, the price of doing business, if you want a political career, is kowtowing to Israel and bowing to the Israeli lobby. And that's the price of doing business. So obviously, you can tell that President Obama doesn't like it. You know, he even he referred to Netanyahu's comments as noise in the background, which I think was very appropriate. But I think Bibi knows very well that in American politics, if you want to succeed, you have to pay Israel, and you have to go on with this kowtowing, and that's the reality. And if we look today, I was just looking at Haaretz this morning. They were saying Bibi will only reference the Palestinian issue in his comments. In other words, this is a massive diplomatic victory for him. With everything that's going on, the massive building in the West Bank, the massive expulsion of people, destruction of towns, the ongoing ethnic cleansing that is a part and parcel of life for Palestinians, and is a part and parcel or a major part of Israeli policy towards the Palestinians, this ethnic cleansing goes on unchecked, and nobody talks about it. We're at the United Nations, and the issue in every newscast, in every newspaper, is Iran. It's an issue that doesn't even exist. So for Bibi Netanyahu, this is a major victory. And whether or not President Obama gets reelected and likes him or dislikes him, to Netanyahu, this is completely irrelevant. He's using this card, this political card of the threat of Iran, very skillfully. And I hope that President Obama gets reelected, and if and when he does, I don't think it's going to make any difference. I don't think he's going to want to get himself involved in this issue any more than he has already, because he's got nothing to gain. And the relationship with Israel, I don't see it changing at all, certainly not in the next 4 years.
Well, it's interesting, Gideon, you know, we've done a number of programs lately on this topic, and there seems that there are a number of elites in the United States who are getting disillusioned with Netanyahu, and that the Jewish community in the United States is not nearly as monolithic as maybe Netanyahu believes it is.
Yeah, this is true, but...
You're absolutely right.
Let me go to Gideon on this one, okay? Go ahead. Go ahead, Gideon.
Yeah, this is totally true, but one should keep proportion. I mean, we were being told for a few years now that the Jewish community is changing, that there are new liberal voices, there is J Street, there are others. Finally, basically, the Jewish community is still as powerful as it used to be, as conservative and pro-Israeli and pro-right-wing and pro-occupation as it used to be. And those changes, if they take place, they last, they take much more time, and they don't happen within months or even few years. Until now, until this very moment, I don't see a major change in the American policy, not before the elections, not after the elections. One can ask himself, why did the United States put a veto last year on the very basic demand to recognize Palestine as a state in the UN? How can the United States put itself in such an embarrassing position in which it is almost the United States and Israel against the whole world? And still it happened by Barack Obama, maybe the most liberal American president ever, and he did so. So this change which we all look for and wait for and pray for, this change didn't happen yet.
Okay. Miko, can you explain to me, and maybe there is no explanation, because most American Jews are liberal, and most of them support Obama, and those that vote will probably vote for Obama, but we still have this very consistent defending Israel and its policies on the ground there. What does the American Jews, do they just compartmentalize it? I mean, but they just say, but that's a different topic, it's a different subject? Because where do they have their values then?
Well, I think I'd preface my answer by saying I really don't think the Jewish community is monolithic. And
I agree with you completely.
Since my book, The General Sun, has been out. Yes, I've been touring the country, and I'm booked to tour the country over the next few months. And I would say at least half of the invitations that I get from Jewish Americans, and these are Jewish Americans who are very progressive, who have been part of the progressive community and have a progressive agenda, including progressive on the issue of Israel. And I think the process that's taking place, and like Gidon said, it's a very slow process, but I see it quite clearly, is a disenchantment of American Jews with Zionism. They look at the state of Israel more and more and they say, well, this is not what we stand for. We stand for more progressive, more liberal values. And here we have a state that's got thousands of political prisoners, a state that is actually day by day engaged in ethnic cleansing of the meanest kind, a state that's holding millions of people under a terrible siege in Gaza. Children are starving, deprived of water. This is not the state that represents me. And so there's a real shift within that I see among American Jews from a very Zionist point of view and a pro-Israel point of view to a non-Zionist point of view. And this non-Zionist point of view, I think, is going to be where American Jews are heading, and I think that's eventually where it's going to go. And I think it's a very good thing. I think it's a very positive sign. So you're absolutely right. There is this sense that mainstream Jewish communities, if we can call them that, while they are progressive and do vote for President Obama, are quite conservative and quite perhaps irrational when it comes to the issue of Israel. But I see more and more of a shift away from that. And we have to understand also that within the mainstream Jewish synagogues and the Jewish communities, there is a very, very considerable stronghold of AIPAC and the Zionist education and very right-wing Zionist agenda that is being taught and that's, you know, people, their children are being indoctrinated in Sunday school. The Jewish schools here in America teach a very right-wing, very...
Okay, Miko, I'm going to jump in here real quick. Gentlemen, we're going to go to a short break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on Iran and Israel. Stay with us. Gideon, if I go back to you, what is the sentiment on the ground in Israel about Netanyahu's rhetoric and Iran, okay? Do people take him seriously? Because in your own newspaper, there was a poll that found that 50% of Israelis fear for the survival of their country should there be a conflict. So what's it like on the ground?
First of all, this should not surprise us, because after 2-3 years of spreading fear systematically, this has its outcomes. What would you expect from an average Israeli who keeps on hearing day and night that Holocaust 3 is around the corner and Israel's existence is at stake, and that Ahmadinejad is not less than a modern Adolf Hitler? When you hear all this systematically, and the media usually collaborates with this, the Israeli media, so what you get is a fearful people, a fearful nation. I think that Israelis, in their DNA, is existential fears. They are all there, very deep rooted, part of them justified, most of them totally manipulated and exaggerated. And the government after government know to manipulate it and to use it and misuse it for their own interests.
Okay, Miko, if I go back to you, a few days ago, Patrick Clausen, he's been a guest on this program. He's a director of research at the pro-Israel think tank, the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, and he said publicly, if the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if someone else started the war. Now, maybe if Netanyahu doesn't take this seriously, and maybe it's just a cover, as you point out, and I tend to agree with you, there are a lot of Americans that take this very seriously. Does that worry you?
Yeah, well, I think it's worrisome when people talk about war as though it was a game and encourage people to go to war. I think it's a very dangerous thing. At the same time, I would argue that whether it's a pro-Zionist think tank, whether it's AIPAC, whether it's any of the other organizations that are linked to the state of Israel, I think they're all playing the same game. I don't think they take this seriously in terms of thinking that there's really a threat. I think they see this as a tremendous opportunity to blow it way out of proportion so that we continue talking about this as opposed to talking about the racism and the oppression and the brutal killing of Palestinians by Israel every single day. And again, like I said earlier, if we look at the newscasts, if we look at the news shows and the newspapers, this is the subject that everybody talks about. And again, when somebody like this comes out from a think tank and talks and hypes the conversation even more, we're farther away from talking about, once again, the real issue, which are Israel's crimes against the Palestinians. So I think this is all part of the same charade. I think it's all part of the same plan.
Well, you know, I'm not sure if Patrick Clausen knows it's a game, okay, because we've had him on the program here. He's quite serious about the threat of Iran, okay, and he truly believes that they're going to be able to weaponize a bomb very, very soon. Gideon, what do you think about this? I mean, is this just people being gullible, or are they just on someone's payroll? Is it ideological? I mean, how do you explain your American colleagues, you know, or your friends in America, and when you look at how they think? I mean, you must be aghast.
Let's talk, Peter, about Netanyahu. You can raise the same questions for Netanyahu himself. Does he really believe in what he says, or does he manipulate everything? And here I must say, I know much less, obviously, about the American think tanks, the Zionist think tanks, but they are all inspired by what they hear from Netanyahu and his environment. And I can tell you that I truly believe, and this is as a credit for Mr. Netanyahu, I truly believe that the guy is deeply convinced that Iran is presenting an existential danger to Israel. And I think that he truly believes that he is the Messiah who would save the Jewish people and the state of Israel from another Holocaust. I think this is quite deep-rooted in his way of thinking and way of acting. And
well, Gideon, do you think that's why he's been saying this since 1993? I mean, he's been saying this since 1993.
Yeah,
they're going to get the bomb.
I believe that. Yeah, I believe that he believes in it. It's not only that they are going to get the bomb, but would they have a bomb, it's the end of the state of Israel and maybe even the Jewish people. I truly believe that he is really in his rhetorics. You don't know what comes before what. First was the conviction and then the rhetoric. So first the rhetorics and then the conviction. But I am totally sure that Netanyahu is convinced that Iran presents a real danger for Israel. And this, I guess, influences all those Jewish Zionistic think tanks or any other parts of the Jewish establishment in the United States.
You know, Miko, you know, we just recently did another program on the Arab Spring, and I've always thought during all these changes going on in the Arab Middle East that this would be an opportunity for Israel to make peace with the Palestinians and then kind of step aside and watch how the Arab Middle East unfolds, because it's messy, it's going to get messier, and you know what? Israel will always be something that they can point to as what's wrong with their lives, because Israel exists. But if the Israelis were smart, make peace with the Palestinians and just stay off to the side. That would be a possibility for them. But no, they want to attack another country in the region. They look like what they are, warmongers.
Well, you know, we have to look back at this issue of an existential threat. And we have to look at the history, the 65-year of the history of the State of Israel. If we look at it, you know, we can see a pattern. There's always a pattern of hyping an existential threat in order to justify a policy, be it a war, be it continuing the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, de-Arabizing the land of Israel from Arabs and for Palestinians, destroying towns and villages and so on. This has not changed. Almost every prime minister, every government that the State of Israel has ever had has hyped this issue of an existential threat. You know, in my book, I talk about the 1967, the minutes of the generals right before the war, talking about the fact that there's no threat at all, there's an opportunity. And when we look at the details, we always realize actually there was no threat on the other side. I think this is true again today. Israel doesn't want peace because peace is not part of the Zionist agenda. It's not part of their strategic thinking. Their purpose is to cleanse the land of Israel from Arabs and from its Arab culture and history, and to create this mythological connection between today's state of Israel and King David's kingdom of Israel. This is the name of the game. You know, making peace with the Palestinians never was, and I fear it never will be part of any Zionist government. And so this is why they behave this way. And again, if we look at the 65-year span of the state of Israel, we can see this is a pattern.
You know, Gideon, it's, you know, extrapolating from what Miko said, then I think maybe Netanyahu does believe that Iran's going to get a weapon very soon, and then Israel must act because Israel has a history of fighting real or imagined threats. All it will use is force and then figure it out later. That's what's so dangerous about this.
Look, first of all, it is dangerous. I truly believe that Netanyahu was brought up in a very suspicious atmosphere, suspecting anyone in the world that is a potential enemy to the state of Israel, suspecting any liberal, any Democrat, any human rights activist, any humanist as an anti-Semitic. And in this atmosphere, he, through this filter, through this prism, he is perceiving everything, and the outcome is not surprising at all. I totally agree with Miko that Netanyahu is not any different, basically, from all the other Israeli governments and Israeli prime ministers. No, the peace with the Palestinians was never a goal for Israel, unfortunately so, because putting an end to the occupation was never an interest of Israel and never was a goal for Israel, and without putting an end to the occupation, there would be no peace with the Palestinians. So Netanyahu found himself one way to break away from making peace with the Palestinians, but even without Iran, Israeli prime ministers had demonstrated many creative ways not to do anything about peace with the Palestinians and not to do anything about putting an end to the occupation. Once it was the terror, once it was that there is no Palestinian people, once it is Hamas, once it is Arafat, once it is Mahmoud Abbas. The excuses were all there, and the Israeli, you can trust the Israeli prime ministers and politicians. They will find many more excuses not to put an end to the occupation with Iran or without it.
Mika, where do we go from here? I mean, it looks pretty obvious that Obama is going to be re-elected, at least in my mind here. Do you see that because of all of the bad relations between the leaders of these two countries, and we have to remember, Hillary Clinton remembered Netanyahu when he was prime minister before. I mean, again, I'm sure they would like to see the backside of him. What do you think how relations will change? Because people say they're somewhat soured, but we've heard this before.
I don't think they're going to change dramatically. You know, I will say one thing just about this impending attack. Bibi Netanyahu, with all of his faults, is a shrewd politician. And even he can see, I think, that there is no value to him at all, excuse me, in attacking Iran. There's no political value. There's no military value. There is no reason for him to actually attack Iran, because the day after the attack, what do we do with this thing?
Yeah.
We've lost the threat, we've lost the issue, we've given it up, and we're left with a problem now. So I think Netanyahu is shrewd enough to understand that.
I'm cynical enough that he would say, now it's let the Americans clean it up or pay for it, because that's what usually happens. Okay, gentlemen, we've run out of time. Thank you very much. Many thanks to my guests today in San Diego and in Tel Aviv, and thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, crosstalk rules.